Just a minute, I shall get my book. Appa. Anyway, I misplaced the book. We'll speak on some other book. So, with the help of some other book. That book is somewhere misplaced. Okay. Om. Om. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. Oh, I'm very late because there has been some disturbance. Somebody came and something happened. So it got delayed. Now, we were discussing in Gita various yajnas. So, the basic yajna we all know, offering ghee and such other ingredients into fire. There is a whole process. There is a devata offering and all that, a process, all that is there. But the spirit of yajna, the essential yajna is, the spirit of yajna is applied to many other areas. The spirit of yajna is applied to many other spiritual sadhanas, and they are also called yajnas. Just a minute, something happened. Okay. So the spirit of yajna is applied to many other spiritual sadhanas, and they are also called yajnas. So here in other yajnas, the spirit of yajna is taken, not the ritual yajna, the spirit of yajna. So he says, Samyag 25th shloka, we have seen two yajnas. One is the Karma Yoga, second is the Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is worshipping Ishvara with all your life activities. Life activities are loving service or offering to Bhagavan. So this offering necessitates a loving relationship, a devotional relationship with Ishvara. Because without some understanding of Ishvara and also one's relationship with him, one has to understand one's relationship with Ishvara, and some understanding of Ishvara and one's relationship with him, and the relation should be of love of surrender, respect and reverence and all. Okay, so that was Karma Yoga. Because this removes certain human weaknesses, a natural human weaknesses of expecting result and ego, identification and fixed expectation. All these things are removed in Karma Yoga. Second, in the 25th shloka, the second point, second yajna was Brahmagni, he called it. Brahmagni means Vedanta Vichara is a yajna. Therefore, when we do Vedanta Vichara, we do it with all reverence, even that with devotion, with Vairagyam, this Brahma Vichara is done. Then the third point, in the 26th shloka, 2 yajnas we have just mentioned. Now I little bit explain and proceed to the 27th shloka. Shrotradin indriyanyanye sanyamagnisha juhvati. Now the third yajna is Sanyama yajna. Sanyama is control. Or in other words, Pratyahara. In yoga, there are 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga. In the Ashtangas, one is Pratyahara. You must have heard Yama, Niyama are 2, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. The 5th one is Pratyahara. Pratyahara means the sense organs lose interest in the external objects. That means that the attraction, the dependency, attraction on the external objects, sense organs lose, they turn inward, they love to be within oneself alone. So the sense organs learn naturally to remain oneself without being attracted, without being forced to look out into the external objects. Okay. So this is in fact a state of mind, because it is that state of mind alone which encourages the sense organs to go into the external world, look upon them as very, very pleasant objects and favorable objects, and tries contact with them and wants to remain in the contact, and after the contact it wants to readjust so that it can have a better experiences. So depending upon the contact with the external objects is the nature of mind, nature of the sense organ. Now here, one is by your viveka, second is by practice. 2 things have to be done. One is viveka vairagya. Viveka is by understanding the very nature of the objects, sense objects, and their contact with them, how they cannot be trusted, the attraction the sense objects have for us is only a false attraction, because it is an exaggerated opinion that the sense objects give us an absolute pleasure. Human mind thinks that, oh, these worldly objects of 5 sense organs promise a lot of pleasure, lot of happiness, security and all that. But in actual experience, they are not. But we tend to forget. Once we were disappointed with our worldly experiences, once we disappointed, again mind looks to external objects. Even after being disappointed, even after the objects fail to give me the expected pleasure, still we go on, because there seems to be some kind of an instinctive, a deeply convinced attraction. The mind has a deep conviction that external objects in their contact give us the pleasure. However number of times we are disappointed, we give some explanation, some lame explanation, we call in Indian languages lame explanation. That lame explanation, lame means some off the track, not true explanation, some kind of defense. Mind says that no, it is due to some reason, some inexplicable reason. This time I have failed it. Let me try once again. Okay. So the mind somehow doesn't give up its hope of getting pleasures, security and whatnot, many more things it expects through the contact with the external objects, through the contact of the sense organs with the external objects. So this a deep-seated, somehow subconscious mind, it is seated there that external worldly objects give us the pleasure as they appear to be very attractive. However number of times we fail, so we don't get expected pleasure, yet mind doesn't give up. It keeps on looking for another. In each experience, it hopes for best, but it badly gets disappointed. Again hopes for better. This hope it doesn't give. Sometimes he gets frustrated. When he frustrated, he says, oh, my luck is bad. But he doesn't give up. Again he tries it. So somewhere, a short experience, a short period of a pleasure comes. It may go away. That's a small experience with the contact of the external objects. You get a small experience. That experience again revives the hope. Whatever little bit disappointment, frustration you had, all that goes away. Your conviction that the external worldly objects are dependable, they offer you happiness. This hope gets further reinforced, further revived. When you are disappointed, it revives your hope. Again it disappoints you, again revives the hope. Again disappoints you, again revives the hope. So each time you are disappointed, there is one small pleasure in a corner, so that you won't be totally disillusioned. See, the worldly experiences, particularly the experiences with your sense organs, with the experiences born of contact with the external objects through sense organs. These experiences, I tell you, have got a very, very cunning way of fooling us. That's why in our Shastras it is called Maya. Maya, Thagni. North Indian Hindis, they would say, Maya is a great cheat. A Thagni Maya they call. Thagni in Hindi. Thagni means a cheat, a great cheat, because it promises a lot, it builds up a hope. Ultimately, it doesn't deliver according to the expectation, but still it gives some lame explanation and again tempts you. It tempts more, but when it disappoints, still it feels that, oh, it's nothing, the disappointment is nothing, come on, again give you further hopes. Again you're disappointed, again build up still more. My God, see, 10 times you get disappointed, it will give you 20 times, it will again reinforce. If you really on the verge of losing total hope, getting totally disillusioned, that time it has got a trump card, last word, last card. You know that when you are going to be totally disappointed with the external worldly pleasures and you are going to be disillusioned, this is the last attempt. Now you give up hope completely. At that time, it really offers you some pleasure. Then all your thinking, hopelessness, everything changes. Your hope is revived. All these days, what are you thought of? All that gets erased. Again, you start freshly building up hope. Oh, when you are going to be totally disappointed, that time it gives you little hope. Not that it really fulfills all your hopes. It only builds up hope. It doesn't fulfill the hope. It will never. But it makes sure that you won't be totally disillusioned. It makes sure that you won't be totally disillusioned, but keeps the hope, but never fulfills. Keeps the hope, but never fulfills. Again tempts, again attracts, but never fulfills. If you are likely to be more disappointed, then a little bit it gives you, so that your hope will be revived and you will not lose hope completely of it. Again builds up the hope, again tempts, but doesn't fulfill. Make sure that it will not fulfill you, because it can't. The worldly objects contacted through sense organs are never capable of giving absolute happiness, because the happiness is a limited, superficial, with a lot of hope, actually delivering is very little. So it is an illusionary. Pleasure is okay, but they are coming from outside is illusion. See, pleasure itself is true because we experience it. That it is coming from outside is a really illusion. Illusion means there is a subconscious belief. The belief has never been proven to be true, but the belief is never belied. It makes sure that you keep hoping after hope, keep go on. Eternally it cheats you. is a real expert cheat. Therefore, we call it Maya. Maya means a wrong impression. You build up a hope which is not true, yet it will not allow you to totally lose interest. It doesn't allow you. So when you are likely to lose interest totally and get disillusioned, then it gives you little bit of hope, so that your hope will be revived and you will continue. Some people do like that. If you are working in a company or in a factory or in an ashrama, they won't take care of the things. They won't provide you facilities, basic facilities for working. The working conditions are very bad. You wait, complain them, tell them, again convince them, explain. They keep on giving you some excuses, some lame excuses. So they'll give you, it is due to that reason, this reason. They keep pending it. They test your patience. It goes on. Ultimately, you lose your patience and you say that no, things are not going to happen. I won't work here. I'll just resign and go away. It is at that time the biggest officer, general manager, he himself directly comes to your room, and he gives an impression that you are so much wanted and we are ready to provide you all facilities. Don't worry, you will be able to work. Tell me what all you wanted. Immediately he orders right in front of you. He will provide you servants. And you think that, oh my God, no, I'm sorry. No, yes. You want to work sincerely. And once he goes away, things will remain same. Nothing will happen. So their purpose is to prevent you from resigning and going away. That's all. The ground reality will remain the same. It won't improve. Only just to make superficially, they just create an impression as if they are providing you with all good facilities. But you become frustrated, because if you are a good worker, you love to work with an efficiently, with a perfectly, and they want to take advantage of your perfectionism. Some people love to work and work perfectly. Any job they take up, they love to do it perfectly well. And those fellows don't provide any facilities at all. And you feel very frustrated and angry. And they understand that you love work and also you love perfectly. And then you will struggle hard, even if the facilities are not provided. You yourself struggle hard with people, work hard with people, try to convince them, do all, because they think it is your responsibility to fulfill the work. They think it is carelessness. They are just careless. You yourself will work hard and do the things. And they take the credit. Oh, see, we have done it. We have provided all facility. Oh, we have done excellently well. This is how the world is. Okay? This boss, just now I have given an event example. This is how the entire world is. It gives you a lot of hope, as if the world is giving you all pleasure, all happiness, makes you absolutely happy, perfectly happy. Oh, unparalleled, incomparably, nobody is happy like you. Oh, it gives you, it tries to give you, will provide you everything. But each time you are disappointed, frustrated, disappointed again and again and again and again. But the world doesn't give up its a knack of, it's a method of tempting you. It's a policy of tempting you. The world has got a certain policy of tempting you, certain nature of tempting you. This is called Maya. Maya has got a different meaning, but they use in this sense also. In the Shastras, Maya has got many meanings. Maya means Jadugar. Jadugar means the miracles. Not miracle, what you call that? Magic. Maya means magic. Magic means it gives you some impression. What is magic? Indrajala we call in Sanskrit. Indrajala, magic. So it gives you an impression as if something is happening, but really nothing happens there. It gives an impression as if something is happening. Okay? So this is called Maya. Maya means it gives a wrong impression. So magic is only a wrong impression. Magic is successful because it succeeds in giving an impression, a perception, but it really not there. Really it's different, but it gives you some impression. Worldly objects also offer you a lot of temptation. And they make sure that you will not lose hope, you will not be disappointed and frustrated totally. If you are disillusioned, see, disappointment, frustration, then the disillusionment, 3 stages. If you are disappointed, it doesn't bother you. It doesn't care. You will be further disappointed. When you are frustrated, it takes a little care. If the frustration also 2, 3, 4 times, still if you have a hope, it doesn't bother. Then you have come to the verge of getting disillusioned. Then it takes extra care and comes to you. No, don't be disillusioned. We'll provide you. That one time they'll give you every facility. Oh, you think situation has changed. Now it is no more like before. The worst is gone now. Now you build up all hope, you will prepare, you will plan for it. Now you change all your plans, you decide to stay back here alone. Permanently you will stay. Next day the problem will start. Oh my God, you think that why did I cancel all my plans? I wanted to resign and go away. So first disappointment, then frustration, then you are coming close to disillusion. That is the time that takes care. Again pull you, put into the world. This is Maya, Devi Maya. See, Maya Devi does this temptation. So a person, by understanding the very nature of worldly objects, their contacts with them, the nature of the mind and sense organs, the very nature of the sense contact, how much they can give happiness. It depends much upon your mind. It is the mind that imagines a lot. It is the mind which is in a relaxed state, hopeful state. You think that it is a great joy, great pleasure. So it is also only an illusion only. An illusion. It creates an illusion that external world is giving you happiness. Here, by understanding this thoroughly, the very nature of experience, don't say that this time the world object was different, next time it will be better. Any number of times the object, it's going to be same, because the very nature of sense organ and contact is going to be the same. And that is a real mistake. It is limited by its nature. It can't give you the promised absolute happiness. The tempted absolute happiness it won't give you. Okay. Therefore, a person who understands these things, he gets a disillusion. He turns his mind inward. So he enjoys the very vairagyam. He enjoys the very detaching, withdrawing the very sense organs and remain within itself. So it enjoys something in the mind only. In the mind, you have got a deeper concept, an idea, what you call, if the mind is a sattvic, you have some yogic idea or bhakta's idea. Bhakta has got certain concept of God, or even yogis also have got some kind of a inner state of mind. Your individual mind, which is understood as a part of a larger mind, and that mind is purified, turned inward, and that mind itself gives you a relaxed, a deeper joy, a deeper happiness. Mind is pure, turned inward, and gets a dissolution from the external objects. 3 things. Mind is pure. It gets disillusioned with the external objects, and it turns inward, antarmukha we call it. And that mind, when it meditates on something, the very meditation gives you very relaxed mind, a deep joy, a deep peace. Okay, this is called sanyama. Okay, sanyama is an agni, the mind which turns inward and remains inwardly happy. It discovers some joy inwardly in its pure state of mind. The mind which is pure, and also you say in a yogic way it is tuned, or in a bhakta's way. In a bhakta thinks of God in a particular noble quality, high quality, lovable quality. So in that quality mind, or you can say peace, the very idea of peace, you meditate upon the very idea of peace. The meditate very idea of non-hating anybody. Just allow them. Be compassionate. Be loving to all. So these noble qualities and noble ideas, mind entertains, and your sense organs come back and remain with themselves. Okay, this is called Sanyamagni. So this is also a yajna. This Sanyama is a yajna. So first Viveka is required, and practice means daily you have to practice for over a period of time to to withdraw your sense organs within, and within the mind itself becomes a purer. Either you think of your God, very loving God with a full of noble qualities and sattvic qualities, or some kind of see, two things are there. If you associate that state of mind with some form of God and quality of God, we call it bhakti tradition, bhakti way of meditation. Or if you call it meditation or bhakti tradition, or without using a God, just to say the very state of mind is very noble, relaxed and pure and all pervasive. So the very state of mind directly you talk, it is called yogic. Okay, it is a yogic way of presenting. So your mind turns inward and enjoys remaining relaxed, peaceful and happy with itself. So here the state of mind is a purer and a larger. Your individual mind gets connected with the collective mind of the universe, cosmic mind of the universe. So therefore here the very cosmic state of mind yogis meditate on, yogis inwardly withdraw and remain there. But whereas bhaktas, not only they withdraw, but they start enjoying your own idea of God. Okay. So these are the two ways. One is a bhakta way, another is a yogic way. But both of them, the way of explaining is different, but it is ultimately the state of mind is same. Okay. So this is Sanyamagni. Sanyama Pratyahara. Sanyama is in yogic language Pratyahara, or in Vedantic language Shama. Okay, Shama Dama. Shama Dama Uparati, or let us say Shama Uparati, that is better. Shama and Uparati, Vedantins call it. Pratyahara, yogis call it. But here using a word, Bhagavan Krishna using a word Sanyama. Sanyama, self-control. And that itself is an Agni. And you are doing it like a ritual, like a fire Agni ritual, like a Yajna ritual. You are practicing this purity of the mind, purification of the mind, turning inward of the mind and sense organs. Okay, so this is Sanyamagni. This is the third Yajna. Now coming to the fourth Yajna, Shabdadin Vishayananye Indriyagnisha Juhvati. Okay, next is Indriyagni. Next is Indriyagni. Indriyagni means, Indriyagni is same, but Sanyamagni, compared to Sanyamagni, it is a little limited, it is, that's all. Shabdadin Vishayananye Indriyagnisha Juhvati. In the first Yajna, now second Yajna is, let me explain that first briefly and then contrast. Indriyagni means Shabdadin, the sense objects when you perceive them, your very nature of perceiving, the quality of perceiving is such, quality of perceiving the sense objects is such that you don't directly get attracted to them. You don't directly enjoy the worldly objects, but the worldly objects you just perceive them and your sense organs perceive them. The very perception of the sense organs itself is a yajna. First one was, now I tell you the contrast. The first yajna is a Sanyamagni, second yajna is Indriyagni. In Sanyamagni, the first yajna, external worldly objects are dropped. That means you disconnect with the external objects, mind is turned inwards without taking help of external objects, without depending upon external objects. It loses attraction with them, it loses interest in them. It loses interest in the external worldly pleasures and it withdraws to himself and enjoys the relaxed state of mind. Okay, this is Sanyamagni. Now this is Indriyagni, means you don't drop the external objects totally. See, first one is external objects are dissociated, disconnected. In the second one, external objects are not disconnected. In spite of the contact with external objects, you practice a kind of inward purity. See the difference. Shabdadin Vishayananye Indriyagnisha Juhvati. So here the sense organs are in touch with external objects. Okay, sense organs are perceiving. They are in touch with external objects. But the very contact with external objects, you turn into yajna. See, it's a very peculiar, strange thing. It's a very strange. In first yajna, your sense organs get disconnected with external objects. It doesn't take interest in them, doesn't indulge in pleasures. You try to avoid the objects, live like a sannyasi. This is possible more for a brahmachari and sannyasi. This first yajna. Okay, external objects you dissociate and you live in a very lonely place in somewhere, in a cave or in a mountain or a forest, like a sadhu or a sannyasi. You lose interest in all external worldly objects, was it contacts with external objects. In the second yajna is more suited to grihastha. Okay, I don't know why this phone is again and again getting disconnected. 45 minutes it is getting disconnected, not even 45 minutes, less than 45. I don't know. Now this second yajna is suited to grihasthas, where sense contact is inevitable. Because you are supposed to be continuously in contact with the people, worldly objects, modern city life, where even if you don't want things come in contact, you can't avoid. It becomes impossible. Then this second yajna is indriyagni. Okay, let the contact which are inevitable continue. Of course, two things are there. Wherever possible, you can avoid the contact with external objects. Objects means pleasurable objects. You don't directly indulge in pleasures. You don't directly enjoy the external objects. Okay. So here, whatever can be avoided, you avoid. Even to the grihastha, there are certain nishedha. There are certain prohibitions. You can't overindulge in pleasures. Even the permitted pleasures also within certain limit. Okay. First is, some of the pleasures are with all five sense organs. With all five sense organs. Some of the pleasures are prohibited. Some are permitted, but permitted in a limited context, in a particular way, in a particular context, in a certain way. It is permitted. Okay. But here he says, whatever you give up, you give up. But whatever become inevitable in life because of your duty, your responsibility, certain things you have to be in touch with them, you have to be in contact with them. You cannot escape. It becomes indispensable. So even those inevitable contacts also, let your mind not wholeheartedly indulge in it. Then how else you do that? Here it is not stated, but Bhashakara himself stated elsewhere. He says, Indriyagni. That means Indriyas have a capacity to perceive. Okay? Capacity means there is an awareness in the sense organs. Okay? Sense organs, there is awareness, they perceive. So don't numb that mind, don't numb that power of sense organs which can perceive. So you just perceive the sense objects without indulging in that pleasures. So here is a very subtle way of telling. So how do you do that? Sense, you are in touch with sense objects, yet you don't identify with them, you don't indulge in pleasures. This means you take it as an Ishvara Prasada. Whatever pleasure comes, whatever object that comes to you, comes in contact with your sense organs, you don't enjoy the very pleasure born out of that contact. Take that contact as a blessing of God. See here, you see, instead of identifying and directly enjoying that contact, you take that contact as somebody's gift, somebody's blessing, God's blessing. This you can understand better if I give you a common worldly man's example. For example, somebody gives you some gift. The gift may be, these days birthday is very common because it never existed in our culture. Marriage and such other functions were there. But birthday has become so common these days because it is an individualistic culture. This is a modern Western civilization is an individualistic. So birthday is an individualistic. Okay. Earlier we had all festivals were social festivals. All family festivals are social festivals. Either family festival or social festival. Everybody participates, everybody equally enjoys. But nowadays we got such a foolish birthday. Birthday is an individual festival. It is only that person's birthday, that's all. All other people, they only go and wish him happy birthday, etc. But it is a purely person's birthday, person's festival, and all other people come and share as an outsider. Outsider means what? It is not their birthday. Okay. So birthday gives too much of importance to individual rather than collective spirit or a family spirit or social spirit. But we have all our Indian festivals, all our family festivals or social festivals. Supposing, see, Deepavali came recently. Deepavali is a festival of you and me and everybody. It is everybody's. It's not a one man's festival, it is everybody's. Even the marriage, though the boy and girl marry, the marriage is celebrated as a family festival. All of them equally enjoy, equally share. The marriage is between two families. Though boy and girl marry, they feel that it is the relation between two families. Not only families, even the extended family, it is their what you call them, their dynasty, their lineage. Their other relatives also, the larger family, mother side, father side, they all feel it is their function. So they share the joy of everybody. So this becomes a bigger, large family function. But anyway, here what I am trying to say is, if somebody gives you gift, that's okay, the side way that you leave it. Now we are coming to the main point. Somebody gives you gift. The person is unable to come. But he loves to come, but is unable to come due to some important function. He sends the gift through somebody. When he sends the gift, oh, you feel so happy, so happy. The person, see, he loves you so much that though he is unable to come on that day, he sends it through somebody, remembers it, spends money and sends his friend or some important person that it must be delivered to you. He tells sorry, but wholeheartedly expresses all his love and sympathy for you, love and kindness and friendliness and all that towards you. Here you receive the gift. Here two things are there. One way is you feel that the gift is valuable and you enjoy the gift and you become happy. Another one is gift is a normal gift, the thing is available in the market, everybody has it. Here what you enjoy is not the very nature of the gift, the amount of money spent on it or the gift itself, it is the person's love with which the gift is offered. Okay? The person loves me, cares me, is friendly towards me, is kind-hearted towards me. So the person's feeling, the love and compassion with which he offers the gift doesn't carry much weight, but the person who is giving and with what heart he is giving, that is more important. I enjoy his heart than the object given to me. Some people enjoy the very object given to them rather than the person who gives it. Oh. So here, instead of the object that is given to you, you enjoy the person's love behind it. Therefore, this object becomes secondary, his love becomes primary. Similarly here, whatever you get, whatever situation you get in life, it is the situation itself is is not important, but Ishvara, Bhagavan, who is bringing me to this situation, or he is bringing this situation to me. So through the situation or object, it is Bhagavan himself giving me, and we see his compassion, his blessing, his grace, his blessing through that object. So here we enjoy more at the level of the mind, not at the level of the sense organ. The object given to me is visible to sense organs, but I enjoy not at the level of sense organ, but at the level of heart. The very receiving, I feel I am lucky, I am blessed to be gifted by this person, to be cared, to be in the good look of this person. This person is very important, and he cares me, he loves me, and he sent me this gift. Therefore, I feel so important in his love, in his view, that itself, his love, knowing that he loves me, cares for me, itself gives me immense joy. Okay, here it is not the gift as an object you are not enjoying, but the person, with what feeling he gives me, that I enjoy. Similarly, here he says, Shabdadin Vishayananya Indriyagnishu Juhvati. You enjoy the worldly objects. Worldly objects come in touch with your sense organs, but the contact you don't enjoy. Through the contact, you see it is the Ishvara's grace, Ishvara's blessing, you receive it. You don't indulge directly in the sense pleasure, but the sense pleasure is only a nimittam, is only an occasion. It is a pretext through which something more than the sense object comes to you. Okay, something more than the sense object. Sense object is only a vehicle. So you are not directly enjoying the sense object, but take this sense contact as a vehicle to feel some deeper feelings. Okay, so this is called Indriyagni, Shabdadin Vishayan Anye Indriyagnishu Juhvati. Okay, so these are the two yajna. One is a Sanyamagnya. In Sanyama Yajna, Sanyamagni. In Sanyama Yajna or Sanyamagni, you avoid all the worldly objects. Bare minimum for your survival of the body, you just eat food and drink water. These are the bare survival. But as a pleasure, none of them you take interest. All of them are you drop. Live in a very lonely place like a monk, like a sannyasi. So that is Sanyamagni. Therefore, yogis, most of the yogis who practice Sanyamagni are not worldly people. They give up the world, try to live in a cave or forest or live like sannyasis. They just remain away from the worldly pleasures. Not even mentally they are supposed to think. So don't look upon any external object as something attractive, something useful, something is promising. Give up all that attraction. So that is Sanyamagni. But Indriyagni, sense contact is not dropped. Of course, two things are there. Whatever you can avoid, you avoid. What becomes inevitable in life, those inevitable sense contacts, inevitable contact with external objects, you take them with a blessing of God. Receive that it is a God's blessing rather than directly enjoying the sense contact. You set aside the sense contact and see something behind the sense contact. There is an infinite selfless compassion, selfless love of Bhagavan towards me. Is a natural love. So this is flowing, you enjoy that. So this is Indriyagni. Iga next yajna nodi. So 1, 2, 3, 4 yajnas are over, and a few more yajnas we see them. Sarva 27th shloka, I just explain little bit, a few minutes. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyama yoga agnau juhvati jnana deepite. Now next is Atma Sanyama Agni. Earlier was given Sanyama Agni. This is Atma Sanyama Agni. Slightly different. First, so that Sanyama Agni was Pratyahara. Now this 27th shloka, which talks of Atma Sanyama Agni, this is yogic dhyana, dharana dhyana samadhi, or upasaka. Yogi or an upasaka does meditation lovingly upon your Ishta Devata or upon your mantra. Either a mantra you have taken or Ishta Devata Diksha you have taken or puja or service, those things you do them so wholly. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare. Atma samyama yoga agnav, all of them are surrendered, offered to a Sanyama Agni. Agni is fire. Okay, Sanyama Agni means the fire in the form of self-control. Sanyama Agni, the fire in the form of self-control. Now, this self-control is directed towards Atma. Atma Sanyama Yogagna. It's a slightly different. Atma Sanyama Yogagni and earlier told Samyama Agni is different. In the previous shloka, the Sanyama Agni refers to simply self-control, sense control. But here, it is little more than the self-control. The mind is tuned towards Atma. It wants to give up entire Prakriti, world and everything and wants to remain in the Atma. Therefore, it is called Atma Sanyama Yogagnav. Bhashya, let me see. Indriyanam karmani, indriya karmani, tata prana karmani. Okay. Indriya karmani, prana karmani. That means the prana. And indriya karmani, the activities of sense organs, activities of prana. All these are karmani, akunchana prasaranadini, tanicha apare atma samyama yoga gnav. Atma sanyama andre nirvikalpa samadhi. So in Patanjali Yoga, Trayam Ekatra Sanyamaha, there is one sutra, Patanjali Sutra, Yoga Sutra. Atma Sanyama Yoga means Sanyama, everything is absorbed in the Atman. Atma Sanyama Yoga. Sanyama is a self-control or absorption. So Atma Samyama Yoga means Dharana Dhyana Samadhi, practicing of Dharana, concentration, Dhyana, meditation and Samadhi. Mind finds the culmination of meditation. Mind wants to dwell on one thought. So, but during Dhyana, mind slips. But in Samadhi, all the mind continuously in one that. Pleasantly, joyfully exists in that. Only there, it continuously in that. So, this is called Atma Samyama Yoga Agni. That means Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. You practice concentration. You practice purity. So this is called prana karma. So indriya karma, prana karma, both of them are offered to Atma Sanyama Agni, Jnana Deepite, which is illumined by knowledge. Knowledge means a kind of viveka also goes with it. Without viveka, all this cannot be controlled. First, some viveka. Viveka gives you facts. It disillusions you regarding its nature. Then the mind develops a taste for it and does it. Okay. Atma Sanyama Yoga Agni means Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. Whereas in the previous shloka, the Indriya Sanyama means self-control of the sense organs and turning inward, that's all. Here, not only turning inward, even after turning inward it continues. All the sense organs, mind, the world and everything is merges into yourself. This is called Atma Sanyama Yoga Agni. Next is 5 yajnas we have finished. Okay. Now another 5 or 7 yajnas, Dravya Yajna, Tapo Yajna, Yoga Yajna, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna are 5. Okay. Then Pranayama is the 6th. Then the fasting is the 7th. 7th means last 12th. Okay. Earlier 5 and these are the 7. 5 plus 7, 12 yajnas. So, next yajna, I think we will discuss in the next class. Dravya Yajna, Tapo Yajna, Yoga Yajna. So, Dravya, Tapo, Yajna. Dravya, Tapo, Yoga. In Murive. Dravya, Tapaha, Yoga. Dravya means material. Material Yajna, Tapo yajna is enduring all kinds of sufferings. Then yoga yajna is also contemplating, concentrating. So swadhyaya jnana yajnascha, in this one shloka he discusses many yajnas. Just names them, he doesn't describe. Dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, swadhyaya jnana yajnas. 5 yajnas he discusses. These 5 yajnas we will discuss in the next class. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat.